I hereby award all marital properties to Mrs. Parker, and to you, Mr. Parker, I award the old family farm.
Please, no! Please, give me another chance. I will make this work out.
The only chance you deserve is eating pig poo on that old farm.
She laughed at him in open court. Not a small laugh. Not an awkward, nervous laugh. A real one, head back, shoulders shaking, while her mother joined in from 2 seats over. And the whole courtroom watched Ryan Parker stand there and burn. If you've ever been humiliated by someone you trusted completely, stay right here. Because what Lauren Parker did to her husband that morning in Sacramento is only half the story. Drop a comment right now. What should happen to people who laugh at someone they destroyed? Like this video and subscribe. Because the second half of this story is going to make your jaw hit the floor. Let me ask you something real quick. Have you ever watched someone celebrate your pain? Not gloat quietly. Celebrate. Out loud. In public. While you're still bleeding. Because that's exactly what Lauren Parker did. And here's the thing about people who celebrate too early. They never check what's buried underneath, what they just threw away. Lauren didn't check. That was her first mistake. It was also her last. Courtroom 14. Sacramento Family Court. A Tuesday in September. Ryan Parker stood before Judge Claudette Merritt with red eyes and a tight jaw and made one final attempt to save his marriage. He looked directly at Lauren. Counseling. For Caden. I'll do anything. Just say yes. The room went completely silent. Lauren turned and looked at her mother, Patricia, and laughed. Patricia laughed louder. Look at this man, Patricia announced to the courtroom. Out loud, like a woman at a show. Judge Merritt's voice cracked across the room like a whip. Mrs. Holloway, one more word, and I'll have you removed. Patricia straightened her blazer and smiled. The proceedings continued. By the time it was over, Lauren walked out with a house, the Range Rover, the savings account, $63,000, and an investment portfolio they'd spent 7 years building together. Ryan received one thing, 47 acres of dry, overgrown farmland in rural Northern California that his late grandfather Harold had left him in his will. Lauren's attorney actually smiled when the land was awarded to Ryan, like the court was doing her a favor by handing him dirt. Outside the courthouse, Lauren put on her sunglasses and looked at Ryan one last time. Enjoy your dirt. Then she walked to the parking structure with her mother and her friends, all of them laughing, and disappeared. Ryan drove north that evening with no plan and nowhere to sleep. The farmhouse was 90 minutes outside Sacramento, down a gravel road past a gas station and a water tower. And when he parked in front of it at dusk, it looked exactly like what Lauren thought it was. Old, sagging, worthless. He walked through every empty room with his phone flashlight. Kitchen, living room, 2 bedrooms upstairs. And then, at the end of the second floor hallway, his grandfather's study, desk, bookshelves, a locked filing cabinet in the corner, and on the desk, a cedar box. Ryan opened it. Inside, 30 letters in Harold's handwriting. Small, precise letters that looked like they'd been measured with a ruler. He picked up the first one. Ryan, if you're reading this, the land is yours the way it was always meant to be. Never sell it. Not because of sentiment. Because of what's under it. Read everything in this box. Everything. I spent 20 years making sure you'd be protected. Don't let impatience undo what patience built. Grandpa Harold. Ryan read it twice. Then he looked at the filing cabinet. Then he looked for the key. He found it taped to the back of the cedar box. Because, of course, Harold left the key exactly where Ryan would find it. That was the kind of man Harold Parker was. The filing cabinet had 3 drawers. Ryan opened all 3 and carried everything to the kitchen table and read through the night. What he found was not a sentimental old man's paperwork. It was a masterclass in patience. Harold Parker had commissioned his first geological survey of this property in 1987. The results came back unusual. Subsurface formation merits further investigation. Harold filed a report and waited. He commissioned a second survey in 1994, a third in 2001. By 2004, a petroleum geologist named Dr. Anaya Whitfield out of Berkeley had completed a full analysis. The property sat above one of the most significant untapped oil-bearing formations in the entire Northern California region, overlooked by every major energy company for decades because the surface looked like nothing. Flat, dry, unremarkable. Harold had known since 2004. For 17 years, he said nothing to anyone. Instead, he started buying, through 4 separate holding companies, none of them bearing the Parker name. Harold had quietly purchased every adjacent parcel surrounding the original property. Irregular shapes, small lots, pieces that meant nothing individually. Together, 112 acres sitting above a formation that made every petroleum engineer who looked at it go very quiet. Harold had also secured the mineral rights. Complete, fully recorded, legally airtight mineral rights across all 112 acres. Drilling rights, extraction rights, royalty ownership. And in 2019, 2 years before his death, Harold had signed a development partnership agreement with a Houston energy company called Tidewell Resources, with Ryan named specifically as a majority equity partner. Ryan found the heir designation at the back of the folder. Harold had updated it 6 months before he died. He'd planned around everything, including the divorce. Ryan called Harold's attorney, Roberta Finch, at 8 the next morning. She answered on the second ring. Mr. Parker, I've been waiting for your call. What's the number? Ryan said, no small talk, no preamble. Roberta was quiet for exactly 1 second. The current estimate, she said carefully, is between $1.8 and $2.3 billion in extractable value. Conservative projection. Ryan stood at the kitchen window, looking out at the overgrown land. The land Lauren had called dirt. When could I sign with Tidewell? He asked. I'll call Houston this afternoon, Roberta said. Ryan said nothing for a moment. Outside, the morning light was hitting the valley floor and turning everything gold. Roberta, Ryan said, does anyone else know about this? Only the people Harold trusted completely, she said, which was a very short list. Keep it that way, Ryan said. He hung up. He did not smile. He did not celebrate. He did not call anyone. He went outside and got to work clearing the land. He signed the Tidewell documents 3 weeks later. Garrett Osei, Tidewell's director of land acquisitions, flew in from Houston and shook Ryan's hand with the firmness of a man who understood exactly what he was looking at. Your grandfather was remarkable, Garrett said. 30 years in this industry. I've never seen anyone build a land position this carefully. He was patient, Ryan said. Patient men build empires, Garrett said. Ryan nodded and signed. He told nobody, not his friends, not his cousin, not even his attorney Dwight Okafor. He went back to the land every morning and worked alongside the clearing crew he'd hired through a local contractor named Burl Daggett. He fixed the farmhouse in the evenings. He talked to his son Caden on the phone every other night and promised him there would be a swing on the porch before his first visit. He kept his head down. He let Lauren post her celebration photos. He let Patricia tell their mutual friends that Ryan had taken the farmland deal really hard. He let them laugh. The first mistake Lauren made was listening to her mother. The rumor started small, the way all dangerous things do. Someone at a county land office noticed the Parker name on a permit application. Mention it to someone in Sacramento real estate. The whisper moved through 3 sets of hands before it reached Anika, who told Lauren over lunch. Ryan's involved in some kind of energy deal on that property. Something big. Lauren called Patricia. Patricia hired an investigator named Dwight Cresswell within 24 hours. Cresswell was good at his job. Inside 2 weeks, he had connected the Tidewell permits to the Parker property and confirmed that something significant was developing on the land. He sat across from Patricia and Lauren in the Granite Bay living room on a Thursday evening and said it plainly. The land is worth a lot of money. A lot. Lauren stood up and walked to the window. He hid this during the divorce, she said. Cresswell started to explain why the timeline didn't support that. Patricia cut him off. We're not here for explanations, Patricia said. Get us an attorney. Someone who does financial fraud. Lauren turned from the window. Her face had gone cold and flat, the expression of a woman who had decided she was owed something and intended to collect. "He doesn't get to keep billions," she said. That sentence, "he doesn't get to keep billions," was the beginning of the end of Lauren Parker's life as she knew it. They filed a lawsuit 6 weeks later. Fraud, asset concealment, misleading the court. Ryan's legal team, now including Roberta Finch and 2 specialists from a San Francisco firm, produced a complete documented timeline in response. Every survey, every holding company registration, every letter Harold had written. Priya Deshpande, Tidewell's petroleum engineer, submitted an expert declaration confirming that the full reserve value had only been confirmed through drilling that began after Ryan took possession of the property. The judge, a man named Alonzo Tripp, who had seen every flavor of courtroom greed, dismissed the case in 47 days. His written ruling included one line that Dwight Okafor read aloud to Ryan over the phone. The plaintiff's claims appear motivated by financial disappointment rather than legal merit. The defendant is awarded full legal costs. Lauren cried in the parking lot. Patricia did not cry. Patricia went home and made a phone call. Here's where Lauren should have stopped. The lawsuit failed. The evidence destroyed every allegation. The judge had basically called her a liar in writing. Any reasonable person stops there. But Patricia Holloway was not interested in reasonable. She was interested in those documents in the farmhouse. The one she believed, if destroyed, could unravel the entire Tidewell deal. She was wrong about that, but she didn't know she was wrong. And that ignorance, that single catastrophic gap in her knowledge, was about to cost both of them everything. Patricia Holloway sat in her Granite Bay living room the night the lawsuit was dismissed and did not cry. She was not a woman who cried. She was a woman who made phone calls. She'd spent 2 months building a case that a federal judge had just called financially motivated harassment in writing, and she'd spent real money doing it. The investigators, the attorneys, the accountants who had spent 3 weeks trying to find a crack in Tidewell's timeline and found nothing. All of it gone. And Ryan Parker was still sitting on $2 billion of Northern California oil reserved with his name on every document, and a judge who had just handed him her legal costs on top of it. Patricia poured herself a glass of wine and thought about the farmhouse. The documents were in that farmhouse. The Tidewell contracts, the mineral rights filings, the partnership agreements. If those documents disappeared, if there was suddenly a question about what had actually been signed and filed and recorded, maybe the whole deal slowed down. Maybe Tidewell got nervous. Maybe Ryan spent the next 3 years in litigation instead of depositing checks. It was the logic of a desperate person. It was also completely wrong. Everything was filed in duplicate across 4 separate locations, but Patricia didn't know that. And that single gap in her knowledge was about to cost her everything she had left. She found Kel Bosworth through a man who knew a man. Bosworth was based out of Reading, heavy-set mid-40s, with a record for property crimes that his attorney had managed to keep from ever fully landing. He was the kind of man who understood that he was being hired to do something illegal and charged accordingly. Patricia met him once, briefly, in a parking lot off Highway 99. She told him what she needed. Get into the farmhouse. Take anything with the Tidewell name on it. If you can't carry everything, burn what you can't carry. Bosworth charged her $4,500. She paid it from a prepaid card she bought at a Granite Bay pharmacy. She told Lauren only that she was handling it. Lauren, who was already facing civil exposure from the failed lawsuit, said, "Just do what you have to do, Mom. I don't want to know the details." She sent that in a text message on her personal phone to her mother's personal phone. Sometimes the most dangerous people in the world are the ones who believe they're too smart to get caught. What Patricia didn't know, what neither of them had bothered to find out, was that Ryan had installed a full security system on the property 6 weeks earlier. Garrett Osei from Tidewell had recommended it after the fraud lawsuit was filed. Motion trigger cameras covering every access point. License plate readers on both entry roads. The kind that work in complete darkness. Exterior audio recording on all structures. Fully legal under California property protection statutes. A direct feed to a professional monitoring service in Sacramento that had a response protocol and a relationship with the Shasta County Sheriff's Office. Ryan had spent $11,000 on it. It was the best money he ever spent. Bosworth brought 2 men with him. They came down the gravel access road at 2:14 in the morning in a dark pickup truck with the headlights off. The license plate reader caught the plate before they'd traveled 50 feet onto the property. The cameras caught all 3 faces clearly. 2 from the front, 1 from a side angle that was actually cleaner than the others. The exterior audio picked up a conversation between Bosworth and the man beside him that included the words, "The lady said get the contracts and burn the rest." 7 words. 7 words recorded in clear audio on a cold Northern California night. Bosworth had barely touched the farmhouse door handle when every light on the property blazed on simultaneously. 47 acres lit up like a stadium. An alarm screamed across the valley, so loud that a cattle farmer a mile and a half away woke up and called 911 himself. All 3 men ran. 2 sheriff's vehicles were already rolling before they reached the county road. The truck was stopped 3 miles out. 2 men in custody within the hour. The third, the one who'd said the lady said get the contracts, turned himself into an attorney the following morning. Kel Bosworth held out for 4 days before he started talking. It took exactly 4 days because that's how long it took his public defender to explain the difference between the sentence he'd receive if he stayed quiet and the deal available if he cooperated. The prepaid phone Patricia had used was recovered from Bosworth's impounded truck. The phone had been purchased at a Granite Bay pharmacy. The pharmacy had security cameras. The credit card used was Patricia Holloway's. The text messages on the phone, 11 of them, between Bosworth and Patricia's prepaid number, were specific enough to read as a step-by-step instruction manual for felony. Get the filing cabinets. Anything with the Tidewell name. If you can't carry it, burn it. Don't leave anything behind. When Ryan's attorney, Dwight Okafor, called to read those messages aloud over the phone, Ryan sat at the farmhouse kitchen table and listened without saying a word. "Ryan," Dwight said when he finished. "Are you there?" "Yeah," Ryan said. "I know this is a lot." "What are the charges?" Ryan said. Dwight paused. "Conspiracy, criminal solicitation, attempted evidence tampering, and because of the burn instruction, 1 count of attempted arson of an occupied structure." Ryan was quiet for a moment. "Occupied?" he said. "You've been sleeping in the farmhouse 4 nights a week for 2 months, Dwight said. "Under California law, that qualifies." Ryan closed his eyes briefly. Patricia Holloway had not just tried to destroy documents. She had sent men to burn a building while her ex-son-in-law might be sleeping inside it, for $4,500. For documents that didn't even matter. The arrest happened on a Monday morning. 2 sheriff's vehicles pulled into Patricia's Granite Bay driveway at 7 a.m. sharp. A neighbor named Colette, who had lived next door to Patricia for 11 years, who had attended Patricia's dinner parties and heard Patricia describe Lauren's divorce as a well-deserved outcome. Colette was standing at her kitchen window with a coffee mug when the vehicles arrived. She watched Patricia Holloway walk out her front door in a robe, see the officers, and stand completely still for a moment that lasted about 3 seconds. Then the robe, the driveway, the handcuffs. Colette later told people it was the quietest arrest she'd ever seen on television, and she'd seen a lot of them. Except this wasn't television. This was Granite Bay on a Monday morning. And within 4 hours, the image she photographed on her phone was on a local Sacramento News website with Patricia's name and headline. Lauren found out from Danica. Danica called at 9:47 that morning, which was the first time Danica had called Lauren voluntarily in 6 weeks. "Lauren," Danica said, "your mom is on the news." Lauren grabbed her laptop. There was the driveway. There were the sheriff's vehicles. There was her mother in a robe being walked to a patrol car in front of a home she'd owned for 14 years. Lauren called Patricia's cell phone. No answer. She called Patricia's attorney. He told her Patricia had been booked on 4 charges and that bond had been set. Then he said something Lauren wasn't expecting. "Lauren, I have to ask you directly. The investigators are going to want to talk to you. There are text messages between you and your mother that haven't come up." Lauren's stomach dropped to the floor. "Just do what you have to do, Mom. I don't want to know the details." She had sent that in a text message. She had forgotten about that text message for 2 months. She remembered it now with clarity, that made her feel physically sick. She called Vivian Crow next. Vivian, who had handled Lauren's divorce, who had smiled when Ryan was handed the farmland, who had spent the better part of a year as Lauren's closest professional ally, answered on the third ring. "Lauren, I've been expecting your call," Vivian said. Her voice was careful, professional, the voice of someone creating distance in real time. "I need you," Lauren said. "I can't represent you on this," Vivian said. "There's a conflict." "I'm sorry." "What conflict?" "You're my attorney." "I was your divorce attorney," Vivian said. "What's happening now is a criminal matter, and my involvement in the underlying proceedings creates a conflict of interest. You need a criminal defense attorney, Lauren. A good one. Today." The line went quiet. "Vivian," Lauren said. Her voice had dropped to something small and tight. "How bad is this?" Vivian paused. "The text message creates exposure," she said honestly. "How much exposure depends on what the prosecutors decide to pursue. But Lauren, I told you. I told you after the lawsuit was dismissed. I told you to stop." Lauren had nothing to say to that, because Vivian was right. She had told her. Lauren hung up and sat alone in the Elk Grove house. The house she'd won. The house she'd photographed on Instagram with the caption "New Chapter," and listened to the silence of a Tuesday morning with no attorney, no mother, and no plan. The investigators came to Lauren's house on a Wednesday. 2 detectives. Polite. Professional. The kind of professional that means they already know what they're looking for and are here to see if you'll hand it to them. Lauren had a new attorney by then, a criminal defense lawyer named Hollis Rand, who had told her that morning over coffee to say as little as possible and let him do the talking. The conversation lasted 40 minutes. When it was over and the detectives left, Hollis sat across from Lauren at the kitchen table and looked at her the way doctors look at patients when the news isn't good, but isn't the worst either. "The text message is a problem," he said. "Prosecutors may argue it constitutes knowing participation, will argue willful ignorance, that you didn't know the specifics of what your mother planned." "I didn't," Lauren said. Hollis looked at her steadily. "Then we'll argue that. But Lauren, the civil exposure from Ryan's team is separate and it's significant. The criminal case may resolve with limited personal liability, depending on what your mother's attorney does. The civil case is going to cost you." Lauren stared at the kitchen table. "How much?" Hollis named a range. Lauren thought about the savings account, the investment portfolio, the equity in the house. The numbers didn't work. She listed the Elk Grove house in February. The Range Rover went in January. Sold privately to a dealer in Roseville for $31,000, which was $14,000 less than it was worth, but Lauren needed liquidity and didn't have the patience to wait for the right buyer. The investment portfolio was frozen pending the civil proceedings. Her own attorney had advised her not to touch it. She moved into a 2-bedroom apartment in Folsom in March. 2nd floor. Parking lot view. Danica didn't help her move. Tess had stopped returning calls in November. She moved a hired 2-man crew and spent the first night sitting on the apartment floor because the furniture hadn't arrived yet, eating takeout from a bag, in a city where she didn't particularly want to be. She thought about Ryan. She thought about the courtroom, the gavel, the way she'd laughed. She thought about standing outside afterward and saying "enjoy your dirt," like it was a punchline to a joke she'd already won. She sat on the floor of her Folsom apartment and thought about that moment for a long time. Patricia's case resolved in October. Her attorney had spent months trying to negotiate the charges down. The attempted arson count was the one that wouldn't move. Prosecutors had the audio, they had the text messages, they had Bosworth's testimony, and they were not in the mood to be generous. The plea agreement: 2 years probation, 500 hours of community service, full restitution to Ryan Parker covering security costs, legal fees from both rounds of litigation, and damages, a figure that Patricia's attorney had fought hard to reduce and had only partially succeeded. Patricia Holloway stood in the Sacramento courtroom, a different one from courtroom 14, but close enough, and entered her plea in a voice that was barely above a whisper. The woman who had announced "look at this man" to a silent room less than 14 months earlier, whispering. The judge accepted the plea without ceremony and moved to the next case. Lauren's civil settlement with Ryan's legal team was finalized 3 weeks later. Hollis Rand had negotiated hard. It still cost Lauren most of what she had left after the house sale. She signed the settlement documents at a conference table in a downtown Sacramento law office, with Hollis on one side and Ryan's two San Francisco attorneys on the other. Ryan wasn't there. He didn't need to be. The yacht party was Garrett Osei's idea. The Tidewell deal had closed. The first producing well was online. The revenue had started flowing. Garrett wanted to market, introduce Ryan to the California energy and investment community as a legitimate operator, not a lucky man, a prepared one. They chartered a vessel out of Newport Beach for a Saturday evening in late June. 40 guests, Tidewell leadership, energy executives, community partners, Roberta Finch, Dwight Okafor, Burl Daggett, who showed up in a collared shirt that still somehow looked like work clothes and shook Ryan's hand so hard it hurt. Ryan wore a dark suit. No tie. He stood at the stern as the boat cleared the harbor breakwater and the Pacific opened up in front of them and tried to figure out what a moment like this was supposed to feel like. He thought about Harold. He thought about Caden, who had visited the farmhouse twice now and had opinions about the swing's height that he delivered with the authority of a 6-year-old who had given this serious thought. He was not thinking about Lauren or Patricia, which is why it hit him sideways when he turned from the railing and found Patricia Holloway standing on the main deck holding a glass of wine. She had come with Grant Weller, a Sacramento venture contact who had known the Holloways socially for years and apparently hadn't thought through the implication of bringing Patricia Holloway to Ryan Parker's celebration. She was dressed carefully, hair done, the full effort of a woman who understood that appearances were now the only currency she had left. When she saw Ryan see her, she crossed the deck immediately, like she'd been waiting, like she had a plan. Ryan, her voice was warm. Warm. The voice she used at dinner parties. This is just incredible. You've done something remarkable. Harold would be so proud. The deck had gone noticeably quiet. Garrett stood to Ryan's left very still. Roberta Finch had appeared from somewhere and was watching from across the space. Patricia put her hand on Ryan's arm. "We're still family," she said. Soft, sincere, the full performance. The legal things, that was fear. People do foolish things when they're afraid. You understand that, don't you? Ryan looked at her hand on his arm. He looked at her face. He thought about Caden on the phone, asking, "Is your new house nice?" Daddy from the house Ryan used to own. He thought about a Sacramento parking lot in September with his keys in his hand and nowhere to go. He thought about enjoy your dirt. He thought about burn the rest. Ryan looked at Patricia Holloway and said, quietly and without any heat at all, "Family doesn't laugh when you're on your knees." He removed her hand from his arm. Garrett touched his shoulder from the other side. "The investors are ready for you." Ryan turned and walked away. He didn't look back. Patricia stood alone on the deck of a yacht she hadn't been invited onto, surrounded by 40 people who knew her name and her story, holding a glass of wine she'd stopped tasting. The Pacific stretched out behind her, without end. She had nothing left to say. For the first time in her life, nothing. Lauren Parker is in a Folsom apartment. The house is gone. The car is gone. The portfolio is gone. She is 36 years old. Starting over, carrying the specific weight of someone who had everything handed to her and threw it away reaching for more. Patricia Holloway completed her community service in the spring. She is a social outcast in the Granite Bay circles she spent 20 years building. The dinner party invitation stopped. The mutual friends went quiet. Her name, when it comes up the same way. Did you hear what she did? Ryan Parker's first producing well came online 11 months after he signed with Tidewell. He established the Harold Parker Legacy Foundation, agricultural scholarships at 2 Northern California universities, a land conservation initiative in the county where the farmhouse stands. He promoted Dwight Okafor to general counsel. He gave Burl Daggett's crew a permanent contract. He built Caden the Swing. And one evening in late autumn, when the grass had gone gold and the light was doing its long, patient thing across the valley, Ryan Parker stood at the center of the property and looked out across 112 acres of the land they had called worthless. He didn't pick up a handful of dirt this time. He just stood there and let it be enough. Enjoy your dirt. Yeah, he really did. Lauren lost the house. Patricia lost her freedom and her reputation. Ryan built an empire on the dirt they laughed at. If this story hit different, if you felt every single moment of that yacht deck scene, leave a comment with one word describing Patricia's face when Ryan walked away. Just one word. I want to see what you come up with. Share this with someone who needs to know that patience is not weakness. Like the video. Subscribe for the next story. And remember, the people who laugh at you the loudest are usually standing on top of exactly what's going to save you. See you in the next one.